This was clear that this was a concept, an idea that has social political ramifications. We'll talk about the social political ramifications of the one God in a minute. But when you focus on the one God, this unity, for example, haven't we been taught, particularly on college campuses, haven't we been taught that the more education you have, the less religion you need? Right? The more intellectual you are, the less spiritual you can become. Those are diametrically opposed, aren't they? That's what we're taught. Once you focus on the one God, you will see the unity between faith and reason. You will see the unity in all truth. You will see the oneness of the mind and the body. You will see a oneness of science and so-called religion. Those things that you thought were diametrically opposed, you will actually see how they're actually connected by believing in the one God. But once you deal with human beings, this is where the biggest effect it has. As I said about Malcolm, once you focus on the one God, you start seeing a unity in human beings. Instead of being taught like we are, to put focus on what we don't have in common. Here we are, human beings. Human beings. Obvious that we were created by the same power. Obvious. Because the design are basically the same. Maybe on the outer, maybe the externals are not the same in terms of our color and such, hair texture and what have you. But we are basically the same. But we're taught to put emphasis on our differences. No. Belief in the one God actually causes you to see the unity among human beings. And you don't look at what our differences are. You start focusing on what we have in common because we are one. And so those things that are external, those things that are on the surface, we're not blinded by that. Because some people only deal with the surface. They can't go beneath the surface. Once you believe in the one God, you will go beneath the surface and you will see the unity that underlines everything, particularly human beings. You will not allow yourself to fall prey to the thought that you're better than someone else because of your race. You're better than someone else because of your culture or what have you. No, because you believe in the one God, you will see the humanity as one. And therefore, once you see humanity as one, you will know that humanity deserves a respect. There's a respect that every human being deserves. And you can't use the excuse of color and the like to not give that human being that respect. Why? Because we are one. Because we're connected. Because we're related to each other. And so even the concept that we believe, and many of our other Christian and Jewish friends believe, the concept of Adam and Eve, right? Our parents, all of our parents, our father was Adam. All of our fathers was Adam. Our mother was Eve. This means we're related to each other. But when we don't focus on the oneness of God, we're not going to focus on the oneness of humanity. When we don't see the unity of God, we're not going to see the unity in humanity. When we don't see the unity of God, the oneness of God, we won't be able to see the unity of the truth. And the truth, there's a unity in truth. You can find truth in many different places, and you can pick it out if your focus is on unity, if your focus is on oneness. And so this concept is very important. And so Allah makes it clear to us in the Quran, letting us know who He is. Because all throughout history, when the prophets came, the prophets gave the teaching. And when the prophets would die, sometimes the people would forget the teachings and they would go astray. And so God became something that you can see. God became something that you can feel. God became the sun. God became the moon. God became some other force of nature. But the prophets never taught that. Not only did they teach that God was one, here's the other one. They also taught that God was beyond the five senses. You can't smell God, can't taste Him, can't touch Him, can't see Him, can't hear Him, can't do it that way. That God is beyond the five senses. And sometimes that's hard for people to deal with. Because they say, if there's a God, how come I can't see Him? Because the true God, the one God, is beyond the five senses. You can't see God, but you can see the effects of God. You can't see God, but you can see the manifestation of God in nature. Because once you see nature, guess what? Once you believe in the oneness of God, once you look at nature, you'll see a oneness in nature. You'll see a unity in nature. And so the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that God is one and He loves unity. God is one and He loves unity. So this concept This concept of, I'll say it in Arabic first, La ilaha illallah. This concept is so powerful that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that if you took this concept, La ilaha illallah, and put it on a scale, on one side of the scale, and on the other side of the scale you put the heavens and the earth, La ilaha illallah will outweigh the heavens and the earth. Why? Because La ilaha illallah means there is nothing worthy of worship. There is nothing worthy of bowing down to. There is nothing worthy of adoring. There is nothing worthy of being a servant to except the one God. And so what La ilaha illallah means, it's a rejection of all forms of false gods. And so that concept is so powerful. That means that nothing can be God except the one God. Human beings can't be God. A tree can't be God. Money can't be God. A big fine house can't be God. No person, no one can be God except the one God. La ilaha illallah. And so when people bow down to the kings, because all the prayers that all the positions that we do in prayer, we bow down, we kneel, we put our foreheads to the ground, that type of thing. All those positions are actually found in the Bible, right? All the positions of prayer people used to do in front of kings. You weren't allowed to look at a king in the eye, because that's the king. You had to bow down to the king. You had to kneel down before the king. You had to put your forehead to the ground before the king. And when Moses, peace be upon him, and other prophets came along, they told the people, no, La ilaha illallah. There is nothing worthy of worship except the one God. And the kings understood. This is the social political aspect of this statement. The kings understood, if the people do not bow down to me, if the people don't bow down to me, if the people don't see me as God, as the ultimate authority, I won't be able to control the people. And so this whole concept of La ilaha illallah, that's why the kings hated the prophets. And the kings wanted the prophets dead. Because the prophets were telling the people, that is not God. You don't bow down to the king. You don't kneel before the king. You don't put your forehead on the ground before the king. You do that to the King of Kings. You do that to the one God. And so, of course, the prophets were persona non grata. They were not welcome in the kingdoms because of this revolutionary concept of La ilaha illallah. Today, we have other false idols that we're taught. False idols. The whole idol of, like we said, of money or material things. False idols. Things that we put first in our lives. Things that we actually worship. We are taught that everyone is going to worship something. An atheist is going to worship something. That is to say, we all put something first in our lives. And what we are taught, the concept of La ilaha illallah means that the only thing that deserves to be put first in our life is the one God. And so this concept of the one God is so critical. Why? One of the reasons is that there are people who are actually fearful of this concept. There are people who actually hate this concept. Why? Because there are people who make money, who get rich off of people being divided. Isn't that right? They get rich. They make billions, trillions of dollars off of people being divided. So any type of concept that comes along that causes people to come together, they are fearful of that concept. So just like back in the day, if you look at what's happening today, in the world today, those concepts that produce unity, those concepts that bring people together, those concepts that causes people to look at themselves as being one is a threat for those people who bankroll, who make so much money off of dividing the people, keeping the people divided, and keeping them focused on each other's differences, and actually getting them to fight each other. So you can't see the crimes that they're doing. So this whole concept of disunity, this concept of disunity is a concept that has to be done away with. It's unity time. It is unity time. I'll also say this, in terms of what this country is dealing with and the solutions for this country. I know that many of you are gung-ho about what's happening in the White House, particularly in January. I feel you. I feel you. However, the work is not over. Matter of fact, the work is actually just beginning. What it's going to take to deal with what we're getting ready to deal with in this country is going to take unity